eligible for those loans, are they? I don't think municipalities are eligible for those loans. No, in fact, they're not.
I
don't think municipalities themselves.
That's what I was curious about.
Exactly.
Okay.
If I recollect correctly, if I remember correctly, municipalities
you're
are
right
not.
that it's paid back through a tax bill.
Right.
And so if you're not paying a tax, then
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
I
that's a
suppose you
whole.
can assess it.
Well,
but
see,
that's,
yeah, that's.
But-
But anyway, let's.
all right, so let's get away from the
back-
finance.
Yeah, let me
I
just
was
clarify.
curious.
For me, I don't care how you pay for it. It doesn't
Right.
matter whether it's PACE, whether it's a PPA. For us, we want to. And when I meet with customers, one of the first things I ask them is, "What's your goal and what are you trying to accomplish?"
Right.
And unfortunately, here it's a little different because it's a municipality or
Right.
a bunch of municipalities. So if the goal is, "Hey, George, we have a few electric bills that we want to do away with. We want to promote sustainability." Right? We want to be green. It's a park. It all
Right.
comes together in a package. And I think that's kind of how we're looking at this. We could finance the project in any way we want to get creative and come up with those
Okay,
those
so,
avenues.
so let's talk, I see there are a couple of issues. One of them you brought up, that's the aesthetics, and whether or not we could do this in a way that fits in with the aesthetics of the park and the National Register of Historic District buildings that are in the park. And so assuming we can get over that hurdle, then another complicating factor is how we share the benefit. You've created this plan so that it's really directed so that Rye Town gets the benefit. But this would probably have to be a shared benefit because it's a shared park. So that's just another complication. I mean, I wonder if we're certainly not ready to take action on this at this time.
Tonight?
No, yeah, no, I know that. No, I know that.
Really?
But I wonder if we might be better off to having some task force look at this as alternatives.
So let
because-
me make a point to you. As far as the benefit for you guys, and when I say that I devised this plan around Rye Town, it started with Rye Town because they pay the meter there, right? And again, that's why I'm here tonight, because Mr. Carver and Mr. Nowotnik stated, well, there's other members of Rye Town that participate in paying the bills there. We could put, and I know the mayor of Rye Brook isn't here tonight, right, and they participate here. So maybe we have the 2 meters from down at the beach, right? Maybe we have a meter somewhere in the city of Rye, the village of Portchester. Everybody gets a benefit from that. The only thing I'd have to understand is with the tariff, the way the tariff is written with Con Edison and NYSERDA is, can I cross the municipalities together and not use that host meter?
Well, I think Councilwoman Brett makes a good point, and you're absolutely correct. Since you pick up 50% of the cost, you'd have to share in the benefit. That's absolutely correct. And that's why I was thinking it might be a larger project as well.
Sure.
And then obviously, Rye Town benefits, then I guess obviously until we dissolve Rye Town, the village of Portchester, Rye Brook, and Mamaroneck all benefit from that. But we could even explore, doing something more ambitious and sharing out the benefits. I think that the goal tonight was to have first of all, foremost, an overview presentation to generate just the kind of conversation you're talking about. I think your suggestion's a good one. So first, let me ask if anybody else has any further questions for Mr. Ford. I think he's done a terrific job explaining the opportunity. I love this idea. I love the idea. We've been slow to become green in the Rye Town. I think this is green. We have to get the aesthetics right, obviously. We have to figure out how to share out. It's a little bit more complicated, the finances. But I love the idea. And so I think your suggestion of trying to create a commission from the board or a committee from the board to follow up, I don't know if anybody has any interest in.
I have the interest, Joe, I just don't have the
I know
time.
you don't have the time, exactly. How about, well, Mr. Nowotnik, you're prepared to help out?
I certainly am. I think I'm with you. I think this is a phenomenal program, and there are other aspects that could still be explored that could perhaps cross the hurdle that we're talking about. You do have a licensing agreement coming up in 2016.
Right.
And they are a heavy user of power that has not been incorporated in this. And there could be a way to negotiate that in a different way.
Yeah, I think
so. There's a way to
actually,
absorb that.
There's a real. I think the other thing this could trigger a real opportunity for shared service. In other words, yeah.
Yeah, I think, I'm very interested in this, George, the application to the village, especially with some of the plans we have underway and what we're pending, and just our utility bills today. Are horrendous. And I'd like to talk to you about that offline.
I appreciate that. And, you know, again, I think to Ms. Brest's point, we can design a system as big as we want, as small as we want. If we just want to scale it down just to the 2 meters at the park and just have the park being powered by solar, there's many ways we could, you know, look at
I
this.
expect what we'll eventually have to do is put out an RFP of some sort. And in fact, the other component to this, I haven't given up on outsourcing operations of Rytown Park. And I'm thinking that, you know, eventually, you know, that's something that the new owner-operator might want to do. So I think your suggestion of getting a committee is a wonderful one. I'm happy to be on the committee. We probably should have somebody from Rye on the committee.
I'll do it. I'll do it. Hopefully my dog work is coming near an end.
Great. Any other further questions for Mr. Ford?
I just wonder, what is the, when we look at these pictures, obviously the more power you generate, the more modules and the larger the structure would have to be.
Correct.
Have you, when you looked at this at all, tried to figure out how much of the parking lot you'd have to cover and how much energy, if you sort of saturated the lot, you'd be able to generate, and is that sort of the level that Rytown uses, or what level is that?
So when I send the PDF off from tonight's presentation, we did do a design layout for the 5 meters that I was speaking of, and we are taking up the 2 main rows and the handicap parking area towards the circle. And you'll see this diagram. It's and I ask, you cannot share this with anyone. This is an engineered document that we designed.
Actually, hold on. Don't distribute it yet.
Okay.
Don't even distribute it yet.
But
if
to
somebody,
answer-
is it there? We can show it to us or not?
I can. Yep.
Just show it to us,
So-
turn it around, and then.
Right,
In-
because I'm
in-
curious
See it.
about the orientation of how
Yep.
you see the,
So in short, to answer your question, we have enough power on those 3 canopies to power the 5 meters I was speaking of.
And so roughly how many modules is that? Because I was looking at, again, the pictures that you have in here.
Sure.
In essence, you're talking about coming down both sides of the building. You know, on either side. Okay?
Can we get any windmills in there too?
it's sure to go over well with the neighbors.
Building is here, and these are the
I think they get
This
the-
is the handicap.
Yeah.
okay, and he's talking about
like to keep the neighbors on their toes.
That make sure they keep coming to these meetings.
Exactly. I got to make sure David doesn't.
you can see the building there, that'll orient you,
Okay.
okay? And
So I'm sorry. So where are these?
Got
three.
this.
you've got this piece here, and you've got these 2 lanes here.
And these are going to look like this?
Yes.
What are all these lines there?
That's all the panels up top. Or which line
Oh,
you talking
I
about?
see. Okay. So this is the beach here?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, what are all-
What else?
The web, George.
Oh, the webs, that's the shading at certain parts of the day from the trees that are all in the street there.
I understand. Okay.
So that,
Anyways, this, and this, yeah?
Right, and that affects the positioning
So it's
also.
basically overall, virtually, well, it's all of the parking area except for the
roll
except for
alongs.
over here, that one, yeah, okay.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I think if you can make it
Remember,
look
the
nice,
building casts a fairly substantial shadow.
right.
And so how much power does that generate? I mean, that's the other question, right?
So this
What would that allow either
This-
Rytown or the park or?
Right, so
Generate.
this system that we designed here in this picture was able to cover the 5 meters at Rytown Pace, and it'll generate just under, it's 297,000 kilowatt hours a year.
But that somewhat maxes out the parking lot, right?
Correct. Now, if we were to take out 3 meters, Crawford Park, 35 Lincoln Avenue, and Rytown offices, if you guys wanted to be quote-unquote fair about it and say, well, we just want to take care of the park. We might be looking at one row.
Good.
And there are 741 panels in this design, to answer your other question. And to Mayor Pagano, I certainly appreciate the opportunity. I would reach out to you and love to have a discussion. I think, from what you see here, I think it was a little good education. What are the spider webs and things like that?
Yep.
We have to consider where we would place an array in the village of Portchester. We need some clear roof space or parking spaces or ground, which
Yeah, that's where the footprint becomes important.
Yep.
Whether
very much so.
I mean,
Your lots are very shaded.
I even suggesting you do this, but if you put these kind of panels on the roof of Costco,
Correct.
you could generate a lot of electricity.
Sure.
Huh.
And to further the education a little bit, what New York doesn't allow, we can only go to 110% of your annual usage in building a system. So let's say we had 100 acres of property, and the town said, wow, well, we only use, let's say, 10,000 kilowatt hours. That's only going to take up, a tenth of an acre, but we have, 99 acres left, right? So we can't build a solar system on that field and sell all the power back to the
You
utility.
can't build surplus?
No.
Really?
They only allow you to do 110% of your annual consumption.
What, do they subsidize in some way?
They do.
They
So,
subsidize you guys, or who do
no,
they
they
subsidize?
subsidize the project through the cash rebate. So,
30%.
Nice, sort of.
from NYSERDA, right?
Nice.
Is it cash rebate?
It's a cash upfront rebate that they're going to put towards the
Upfront?
system. Yep.
So we get cash up front?
They do.
It comes to
Oh, you
us to
guys do.
reduce the project
Reduce
cost.
the cost.
I got you.
Yep.
So, George, the incentive, the ITC is going to sunset when?
At the end of 2016. And the system has to be interconnected by the end of 2016. Now,
Now, that, as you mentioned, you correctly, obviously, pointed out for a municipality, it doesn't do that. The investment tax credit doesn't really help us. But what about the private sector?
sure, on the private sector it does, but it does help the municipality because under these power purchase agreements where we'd be able to sell you power at a cheaper kilowatt hour rate,
Right.
what's happening is the third-party owner of the system is benefiting from that tax break, and that's how they're able to lower your cost of power by selling it to you.
So as you use the example, 15 cents to 13 cents or 12
Exactly.
cents.
Well,
or whatever it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. But those incentives are a significant portion of this. When you think about the tax credit of 30%, the depreciation, and then the cash rebate, it's a large number.
And what's the life of these things?
The panels are warranted for 25 years. That doesn't mean in 25 years they come off the roof or they're dead. They just degrade each year by 0.5%. So in 25 years, they'll still produce 87.5% of their power.
After 25 years?
Yeah. There are modules that were built in the 50s, believe it or not, that they put up on the Hubble telescope in 91, and they're still up there producing power.
And in one of the scenarios, we'd end up owning the assets after 20 years?
There's
opt for-
various. I have it
Right.
sooner than that in some of my models.
All right. Then once I own it, then I'm for free.
You have no bill. Yeah.
What's the
All of your usage gets eliminated.
What's the maintenance stream like on this, George?
Good question. My family personally owns a solar system on our commercial building. That's how I got into the business itself. We've had that system for almost 4 years, and I have not touched anything. Solar panels are, when you think about it, it's a very simple technology. It's not like a car. There are no moving parts. It's a piece of glass. It's got silica and sand in it. That's it. It's attached to a wire, an electrical wire, which doesn't go bad, right? And then it goes to an inverter, which is the brains, and that's the one component that may have a breakdown at some point. There's a fan in there. It's like a computer, basically. So the maintenance as far as the panels are concerned, these panels, for example, on our roof, they're sitting at a 10-degree pitch. So every 7 to 10 days, we have some type of precipitation, whether it's rain or snow throughout the winter or the summer, and Mother Nature is cleaning those panels. Rain hits them, snow, anything that's on those panels gets washed off. So there really is no maintenance. But of course, when you're talking about a significant investment like this, somebody's got to keep their eyes on it. They want to make sure it's producing. They want to make sure it's working properly. So, having an operation and maintenance contract is probably a good decision. It's a big investment, it's a long-term asset, if you will, that the town or municipality is going to be participating in. If you do a power purchase agreement on one of these systems for a school, whether it's Portchester High School or Rye City or Town of Rye, the third-party owner, the owner of the system, you guys wouldn't have to maintain it. It's their system. They own it. They would maintain it. But in the model where you would own it, you would have to obviously come up with, a maintenance plan to keep that system running.
Sure. Fred, did you have a question? Sure. Fred, go to the mic, please.
Just curious, because the beach is susceptible to nor'easters and hurricanes. How would the system handle a hurricane?
That's a great question, and the answer there is these systems are built to the local wind codes. So, for example, on my family system here in Portchester, it was ballasted on the roof for a 95-mile-an-hour wind, okay? The local code here is 95 miles an hour. The system itself for the carports, the way it's designed is we would drill down into the ground about 15 feet, okay, straight down. There'd be a rebar type setup going into the ground with cement. The actual steel structure of the canopy would go into the ground around the cement, and that's how it's kept into the ground.
What about salt?
Again, we're
Salt water?
yeah, coming in.
That could be,
How often does that happen down at the beach? A couple times a year. Okay.
well, I was just curious about the, just normal salt to the air
Sure.
in a beach environment.
Yep.
I know what it does to motors.
Yep. Oh, yeah. It's painful. It's a good question, and I'm going to err on the side of caution on that one, and I'll get some examples of arrays that we've installed near saltwater bodies of water.
Yeah.
And we can get some examples of how long they've been built and if anything has happened to those systems as far as pitting or anything along those lines. But the panel itself, again, it's a piece of glass.
That's what it is.
Yeah, it's a piece of glass, so that wouldn't be a concern. If there's flooding down there around the concrete that's in the ground, that's something we'd have to look at. Again, all could be designed around saltwater specifications.
Okay, I think we've got a bit of we had a 7:30 stop this evening with a budget meeting, so did anybody have any further questions for Mr. Ford?
If you do, feel free to reach out. I provided my business card in there with my contact information, and Mayor, I will reach out to you, and I look forward to
I
speaking.
have some more questions.
Yeah, sure.
And we'll have a committee, we'll set up, so when we have the committee, Bishop, make note of the committee, and we'll get in touch as well. Thank you so much, Mr.
Thank
Ford.
you very
Appreciate
much.
it. Very,
Thank
very,
you.
very
The
helpful.
opportunity.
Okay, now I know you're going to be transitioning from the dog committee. However, I think you wanted to give us an update.
I did.
Thank
So
you.
we had a meeting on Friday. Bill was there for the Park Commission. We had a meeting with the City of Rye to implement the dog policy. The meeting, we had our city clerk there, Don Noda, our city manager, the police commissioner, myself, Bill Lawyer, and our corporation counsel. And what we're talking about doing, I mean, a couple issues that we know are gonna impact this implementation are, one is creating that code of conduct that we talked about. And our city clerk, Don Nodars, actually did a fair amount of research by talking to local municipal clerks to find out what their experience was with dog parks and code of conduct and things like that. So I provided the commission members with the proposed, essentially the form for registration, and what she would do is have the registration form itself have people certified that they're going to comply with the rules and regulations. And she's even found little registered dog tags for the dogs to carry, and also anticipates that dog owners will be given a card so that they can carry that as well. Now, I know Bishop had done some work on dog code of conduct issues, so I circulated these as proposed rules and regulations. We can certainly add to them if there are additional things that we want the code of conduct to include. But, so this is really just kind of a starting point. So if there are pieces that we want to add, we can certainly do that. It's definitely open for discussion. We also are looking at how to make sure people know about the registration requirement and know to come and register. And we're also talking specifically about enforcement going forward and making sure that this project is successful by providing adequate enforcement behind it. So all those issues are being considered, and I want this park commission to know that the enforcement piece of it is definitely being set as a priority for the city of Rye, and we're looking at some pretty meaningful ways to make sure that there's a police presence around the park at all times. And hopefully, after our budget discussions and stuff are all over, I can tell you more about exactly what we've got in mind. But we're definitely going to have significant enforcement around this.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. This is terrific, and I appreciate, again, the goodwill and sharing. Well, so if this is draft rules?
Yes.
So I would have hoped we can, 3 dogs seems like a lot for somebody to voice control. I would have, if you're asking for feedback, I would have said 2 dogs would have been preferable from my standpoint. And the other point, and I read somewhere, ideally, I'd have people begin to pay for the registration, because, and I think you decided not to do that with your law.
Well, let me tell you why.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. The reason that we decided that we weren't going to pay for year 1 is that we know that the Park Commission has only adopted this on a trial basis. So we felt that to the extent there was some uncertainty about whether or not this was going to be successful, it wasn't fair to charge people for year 1. But our anticipation is that we will charge year 2.
Okay. Perfect. So, and I like the idea of having the dog clearly identified tags. And those are the principal. That was the principal thing that left out. I mean, I know Mayor Pagano, I don't know if you had any comments, or Mr. Nowotny. Were you in the meeting on Friday?
No, I was not at the meeting, but I would ask if you could approach the city of Rye. We have not received any official notification of what the new dog law is. It's not on your website in any rational way. So if the clerk can send us an official notification to say, hey, here's the new dog law, because it does impact the Rye-Town Park Commission.
Right.
And I think we should get an official notification from the city.
Perfect.
So
Great.
that, I mean, that obviously makes a lot of sense. The one thing I can say is that it does take some time after the Rye City Council passes a law for those laws to actually become official, because they have to get registered with the state. So I don't know, as I sit here today, what the
It
process.
is now effective.
Oh, it is
It
now
is now
effective.
effective. It's been filed with the state,
Okay,
and it
so
is
there's
now
the
effective.
update.
We've had whatever confirmation we needed that it is now
Oh, great.
in
Okay.
effect. So
So you plan to roll this out, how soon?
we are hoping the registration will roll out beginning of January. So it's just going to take some time for us to get the registration pieces in place. But we anticipate that it's going to be a January through December registration period every year. There will not be prorating when we do a fee. It will just be, as of January, like our parking permits work, as of January 1, you need to have your dog registered if you want to take advantage of this. And if you want to take advantage of it mid-year, then you pay whatever fee it is, and you're registered through the end of that calendar year. But it's going to be a calendar year basis. So we hope to have these pieces all put in place by beginning of January 2015.
Great. Any other questions?
Not at all. Great.
Thanks. When are you going to finalize this draft? If I have any other comments, can we send them to you?
You can send them to me. We're just in the process of finalizing it.
Perfect.
And a strategy for making sure people know about it. Those are the 2 things we're working on over the
Wonderful.
next
I know
several weeks.
There's a couple other sort of related issues that you guys are going to look at, the liability issue and other parks. Again, we haven't seen the law,
So
but
we have referred it to the Recreation Committee for other
Okay.
parks. So that should be happening. I'll follow up with Terry McCartney, who is the City Council liaison to the Rec Commission, but I'll find out how that's
Great.
going on. And the liability piece, you've specifically asked for reimbursement or for
Indemnification.
Yeah.
indemnification. I've had some preliminary conversations about that. If you want us to take an official action on it, we certainly can. But at this point, I'm not at liberty to
sure.
to
I
commit
just
one way or
wanted
another.
to make sure that exactly.
That conversation has at least begun.
Beautiful.
So.
Well, again, I think Councilwoman Brett, I can't thank you enough for your hard work on this. I know you're in dangerous territory. David, did you want to say anything from the Friends at all on this at all? Or I know you guys have been fairly vocal.
No, I don't really have very much to add. I mean, I think everybody knows what the Friends' position is. I've worked with the dog committee, and at least from my standpoint, I think it's worth giving all of this a try. I agree with the position that's been expressed by the commission members that there should be some sort of a sunset provision on it if it doesn't work, because I think the enforcement question is going to be really the critical issue. At this point, I'm optimistic, based on what Councilwoman Brad has said, that there will be effective enforcement after the hours when the dogs went off leash. The few times I've been in the park this year, it seems fairly good on the weekends, but I have to say that in the mornings, there's plenty of dogs running off leash after 10 o'clock, but I assume that all of that will be taken care of once the
So I think
program's
that's
implemented.
I mean, I know that's Councilwoman Brett's hope, and I think the hope is that precisely that we can get enhanced enforcement. And obviously, so January-April period or January to March period will be critical.
Yes.
So we'll look forward to hearing your feedback, and I think we all share the view that if we're going to make this work, we're going to need stringent enforcement and creative behavior that we can all agree with is clearly defined.
Absolutely. I will say Councilman Slack at our last meeting was at the meeting when we passed this, was very vocal that we needed enforcement. The mayor's been very vocal privately with me and publicly that we need enforcement. So
Good.
You've got the full support of the council on this, and
Wonderful.
I think we'll be able to back that up.
Let's make it happen.
I'd just like to add, if it's possible, that our staff somehow at least get some input into the enforcement aspect. We're going to have to integrate our enforcement with your enforcement.
Enforcement is straightforward as far as I see. I mean, we're not going to have any staff there between January and March.
No,
Correct.
agreed, but I'm assuming that this is an
Well,
annual.
we're gonna revisit
This is an
everything.
annual law.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think we're all very hopeful that the January to March period is a success, and then we'll sit down and have because obviously
Right.
doing it in the summer is going to be different than
In
winter
season
anyway.
is different. I think there's less issue with enforcement in season, in part because we've got security
Right.
staff there, right?
Right.
So we really,
I continue to believe that Mr. Joffrey and his staff will be the big beneficiaries if we make this successful, because they're not going to be great, asked to do something, asked to do the impossible.
right.
Any other questions? Any new business, Bishop? Or we?
No, I think we're in
Wonderful.
good shape today.
Any further questions, comments from the board? Well, I want to just take this opportunity to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving.
Same to
You have
you.
lots
Thank
to
you all.
give thanks for, and look forward to the next meeting in
Okay.
December.
Okay.
Thank you so
All
much.
right,
Thank
thanks.
you.
Motion
Commission-
adjourned?
Yeah, motion, second?
Second?
All in
Okay.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you.